It's hard to predict the future, but I think one thing we can all agree on is that the future is moving more and more toward integrating technology into our everyday lives. That's why I think that studying computer science puts us in the best possible position to adapt to any changes that might come our way. So today I will be talking about why I think coding is a great skill to learn, how you might be able to start regardless of whether you're in college or you're post-college, and my experience studying computer science in college as well. One thing I've learned from coding in terms of the way I think is that coding teaches us to approach problems in a very systematic way. One thing you might have noticed if you've ever dabbled in a little bit of Python or Java, the most common coding languages, is that code won't run if you don't have a very specific structure and a specific way of thinking. One of our projects that we had to code in school was Tetris. There's a couple things you have to think about if you're about to code Tetris. There's the blocks itself, like how does it rotate? How does it drop down on each line? And you also have to think about the game, right? So what happens when a block falls into place perfectly, or what happens when it doesn't? What happens when a whole line is matched up with blocks? So you have to think about the logic of how all of this, the blocks and the game itself, work together. You definitely have to think about edge cases. What happens when you toggle the blocks too far to the left or too far to the right? Like, it can't go off the screen. So there's different edge cases that projects like this force us to think about, which I think builds the muscle of thinking about edge cases in different real life situations as well. And if you don't think in a very systematic way, you are punished by the bugs that you'll get. Sometimes you'll get bugs that you don't understand like how or why they came to be, but it's because of flaws in your logic. And in order to solve these bugs, you will have to later on go through your algorithm and be like, okay, where in my algorithm did I make a mistake? And so if you don't think about it in a systematic way to begin with, then you will have to think about it in a systematic way later on. And I found that this has translated really nicely to solving problems in real life. And granted, I've had many different experiences that might shape the way I think. I do think that the systematic way I think about how to solve problems that I see in my personal life definitely comes in some part from the way I was trained to think when I was studying computer science. I found that whenever I see a problem in front of me, the first place my mind goes to is, okay, what is the solution or outcome that I want to see? And then from there, I work backward and I see what are the sub-problems or sub-obstacles I have to get over to get to the solution or outcome that I ultimately want. And again, this may or may not come from computer science, but I do know that I didn't always have this framework of thinking, and I do know that when I was learning computer science, that was usually the framework I used to think about the problem I had to solve for whatever project or homework assignment I was working on. I think the best part about having so many resources online these days is that you don't need to be in college to learn how to code. Even if you've graduated 5, 10, or however many years ago now, you can still learn to code as an adult. If you've been wanting to transition industries into tech for a little bit now, I think learning how to code can be a great way to angle yourself as a candidate into a tech company. There are so many industries that tech is starting to move into. A few off the top of my head are medicine, automotive, agricultural. I just think about the trends from the last 5 to 10 years. For your industry, you might think about what tech startups are starting to grow in that space. And this might give you a clue as far as how tech will be more ingrained in the industry that you might be in. As far as positioning yourself to be in the tech space, there are some people who take boot camps. These boot camps train people to code from zero to getting a job as a software engineer or something equivalent to that. And some of these boot camps will take a payment up front, or I think others will also take a percentage of your first year income when you get a software engineer or equivalent role. But there are other resources online also, like Code Academy, Udemy, maybe Khan Academy also has some coding classes online. There must be many different options online, so if you just take a quick look and see what might fit your your schedule or what might fit your needs, learning how to code online can be a great resource as well. So if you've taken all of these classes and you feel like you have a lot of knowledge under your belt, but there hasn't been a full certification, you can definitely code projects on your own. Maybe you can show off your skills by coding different games that you were interested in as a kid, or maybe you can code an app that you have a great idea for. I think it's a great idea to put all of your personal projects in a website or in GitHub. And these are definitely projects that you can put on your resume as well. So if you're not in tech, but you want to move into a role in tech, or if you just want to show off what you've done, this is where your projects can live online and different people can come see what you've built. In some ways, I think it's even more impressive to learn coding outside of college and university because it shows that you are constantly learning, you're constantly thinking of different ways for how you might develop yourself. And personally, I would want someone on my team who is always looking to make themselves better. If you're in college, as long as you get a computer science degree and you know enough data structures and algorithms to pass coding interviews, you're pretty much guaranteed a high 5-figure, if not a mid 6-figure starting compensation your first year out of college. Starting salaries for software engineers and PMs, which are the most common career paths for computer science students out of college, they usually start around 80K on the low end and more realistically go up to 108 to maybe 120K. On the high end, if you get recruited at a trading firm or whatnot, it can go up to 150K plus. And that's just for base salary. You can probably find more specific estimates for the companies that you're interested in on levels.fyi. Even if you want to pursue a career outside of tech, maybe it's marketing, law, medicine, design, whatever it may be, I think we become more attractive candidates for a job if we are multifaceted. For example, a marketer who knows how to code might have a slight edge over a regular marketer or even a successful marketer. A multifaceted candidate might have different perspectives that someone who has followed a more conventional path might not have. And I imagine this would be very attractive for whatever job or venture this person might pursue. And if you're in college, this isn't something that you have to start right when you get into school. I personally started computer science my sophomore year. I was 1 year behind a lot of my peers, but I wasn't the only one who had started studying computer science my second year in college. I will say as a student, your path might be a little bit easier if you start computer science earlier, simply because you have more knowledge under your belt as you're going for the internships your sophomore and junior year. And those internships will ultimately give you a huge boost to getting your full-time job. But even if you don't study computer science as your major, if you've taken enough classes relatively early and you can angle your resume to be more tech focused, this will help you get more interviews. And if you're good enough at solving these coding interviews, then you can still have a shot at getting a tech job. I knew a handful of people in college that didn't study computer science as a major. They majored in business or East Asian studies, but they took enough computer science classes to have the knowledge and they positioned their resume to be more tech focused. They wanted a job at a tech company and they got it. I went into college undecided. I didn't have any intense interests in any particular space or major. So I took a variety of classes in my first year. And I think it was spring semester of my freshman year where I decided I wanted to give computer science a shot. But the introductory sequence in our school worked in a way that you had to take the first and second classes right after the other. So I had to start my sophomore year. And part of the reason why I decided to study computer science was because I wanted to give myself as many opportunities as possible post-grad. Part of it is monetary. I wanted to build up my net worth as quickly as possible. So a few years down the line, if I wanted to take some time off, if I wanted to invest in something I believed in, I would have that option. I also think that there's the most opportunity for different types of jobs if we have a technical background. So it's easier to make a lateral move into a different industry with a background in tech because you can enter a different industry as the techie person. Honestly, studying computer science in college was really hard. I won't even sugarcoat that. But it probably also depends a little bit on which school you go to. I imagine computer science at many schools are very hard. I think probably because the major is growing in popularity. And these schools probably make the introductory sequences pretty hard to weed out students because Obviously, they don't have the infrastructure to support 5,000 students who want to take computer science classes for 4 years. But I got through it. I didn't have a huge background in computer science before I started, and I think it was hard for me because I started computer science relatively late compared to the rest of my peers in my year. And I also didn't have a huge computer science background when I started. I honestly would even consider myself having no background, but I did take a class in high school, although I didn't get much out of it. So yeah. But if I and many other people can learn computer science, then I trust that you can also. I promise you I don't have any extra talent intellectually. I just happen to work pretty hard. In college, I knew that if I could just finish the courses, get a degree, pass some coding interviews or technical interviews, then I knew that I could get a pretty high paying job post-grad. So yes, I was optimizing for a high post-grad income. I hope this video inspired you to lean more into your tech/computer science interests. Some people take 2 years off to get an MBA to make that industry switch into a tech company in a non-tech role. But if you can make that industry switch by taking computer science classes online, why not try? If this video is helpful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.